Hey man, what are you doing? Oh, I was just cutting this rope. You sure you don't want a sharper knife? Nah, it's fine. Just gonna take me a minute. Oh damn. So, having a sharp knife is pretty important, but how do you even go about sharpening a knife? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna go ahead and cover all the different tips, tricks, tactics, methods, pretty much everything that you will ever need to know about how to get a knife scary sharp. Let's get right into it. First, let's talk sharpeners. You're gonna have 4 different methods of sharpeners that you can use. Now these 4 are going to be your whetstones, your manual sharpeners, your electric sharpeners, and the last one, which I don't even know what to call it. It's like I don't know what it's classified as, but this is what it looks like. Firstly, let's talk electric. Oh. Hi. First, let's talk electric sharpeners. Electric sharpeners are generally the most expensive, especially if you want the really high quality ones. They could cost you potentially upwards of $200. Now, the thing about electric sharpeners is they're quick and they're easy. All you do, plug it in, you press the trigger and it goes, and you just run your knife on either side of that belt and it'll sharpen your knife. The one thing you will notice with electric sharpeners is there are quite a few downsides to them. The first thing is that they are very, very messy. They'll send bits of your knife, like the metal shavings from your knife, they'll send them everywhere, all over your house. They're not clean at all. And if you do it on a countertop, like you're sharpening your knife on a countertop, you can like run your finger through the knife dust that's there. And now the other downside to these is that there's a fixed angle which you can sharpen at. And most of these electric sharpeners are going to have those 20 and 25 degree bevel options. Now the reason that this is an issue, when you get a knife that's 27, 30, 35 even, or on the other end of the spectrum, you could get a knife that has a 12 degree bevel. There's a lot with a 14 or 17 degree bevel, or even an 8 degree bevel. And obviously that electric sharpener is not going to be able to sharpen those. Last thing I want to mention with these electric sharpeners is that they will dull the tip of your knife. And let me show you what I mean by that. An example would be like this knife, which I did run through the sharpener a few times, and I shouldn't have done that, especially with this expensive knife. You can see that the tip of the knife there is just dulled a lot more than I want it to. Next, let's talk whetstones. Whetstones are probably the oldest form of knife sharpening there is, and for good reason. Whetstones are going to be the most precise. They're going to be the best if you want to get your knife ridiculously sharp. Now, the downside to whetstones is they're not super beginner friendly. They're going to be a lot harder to learn at first. With the electric sharpener, anybody could pick that up in a matter of mere minutes, and they'll have a pretty sharp knife. Let's use the whetstone. We'll do 400 for my knife. There's one thing I'd like to talk about with whetstones before I get into too much sharpening here. A lot of people, and I've been told this too, but a lot of people are told when they get a whetstone that if you take your knife and you just find a consistent angle and you sharpen it that way on both sides, you'll have a better angle on your knife than any factory edge. I completely disagree. Now look, that can certainly work. For some people, it does work. They'll grab a knife and they can just put it on there and they'll have a consistent angle every time. You are not those people, and it probably will not work for you if you try that. So what I recommend is buying a wedge with a designated angle. This one is 20 degrees. You put it on there, you take a rubber band, right? You take your rubber band, you rubber band it to your whetstone, and then you're good to go. The other thing about whetstones is that your angle will never be perfect no matter what you do. You'll always be off a degree or two, because look, if I put that on there perfectly, right, All it takes is for me to get started and do this or this, and my angle's off. So you have to be pretty consistent with your knife work when you're sharpening it on the whetstone. Again, I recommend getting a wedge. It's just a million times easier. You don't have to think about it nearly as much on whether or not you did the right angle. I don't have to sit here and be like, okay, it was this far on the last one, so I got to do it like that on the next one, and then you flip it around. It's just a million times easier. And I would disagree with anybody that says that that's better, because it's going to take me a lot less time to sharpen this knife with this thing than it will you trying to figure out what angle you just put your knife to on the last stroke. A big mistake a lot of people make when they're sharpening with whetstones is they cut their, I'm just going to call it a stroke for lack of a better term, they cut it short, right? So they go and then they get to like this angle and then they stop. My blade isn't completely sharpened like that. I need to continue till the tip of my knife is like resting on the stone. If you cut it short and you keep cutting it short, your last whatever quarter or third of your blade is going to be significantly more dull than the first half or whatever, 3/4 of your blade. Okay, so we've done it. Now we have formed the burr. When you form the burr like that, what that means is that this has pushed the metal and rolled it over to this side, the other side of the knife, which creates this lip on the end of your edge here, which is what my thumbnail is getting caught on. That means that it's been ground down enough where it's at the appropriate angle and the appropriate sharpness, essentially. But when you get that burr formed, just go ahead and flip your sharpener around and you'll sharpen the other side. And if you have enough hours behind one of these whetstones, you'll feel when the burr is gone. And then usually I like to go till I get a little bit of a burr going back on the other side. And that just means it's time to swap to the 600. See if you can see this. So now would be a good time. Now that I've sharpened this thing up on that whetstone, now is a good time to talk about honing rods and strops. When you're using a knife, this is your edge of your knife, right? When it's freshly sharpened, it's been ran through the honing rod and the strop. It's freshly sharpened. This thing is razor sharp. Your knife edge is pretty much like this, right? Imagine my two hands are the edge of the knife. Now, over time, when you use it, that steel's going to bend a little bit, right? It's going to come out of alignment, and it's going to do something like this. Now, this is what your edge looks like. This is microscopic, by the way. You can sometimes barely see it with your eyes. This is just what happens with regular use of knives. What a honing rod does is it essentially straightens that edge right back out into what it is, what it should be. What is a strop? You can buy a strop, but I'm here to let you in on a little bit of a secret. You don't need to buy a strop. A strop is essentially just leather. It is the rough side of leather. You'll see a lot of old timers use belts, right? A lot of old timers, they like to wear leather belts. When you're wearing that leather belt, a leather belt's gonna have a rough side and it's gonna have a smooth side. The smooth side is usually what faces out. I'm not wearing a belt because I don't like belts, but then the rough side is what faces in towards your stomach. Now you'll see a lot of old timers use it because this rough side polishes the blade. So that knife, right, it's just been ran through the whetstone, not a honing rod because I'm not a big fan of that. Now all you do with the strop is you always go back, okay? My blade is facing this way. You always run the knife backwards. Now I know what you're thinking. What does a strop do? Why are they so necessary? They're not necessary. But what it does is it just polishes the edge of that knife, right? All it's doing is just polishing the edge. And you don't have to be very accurate on the angle degree here. You just have to polish that edge. That's it. Well, a honing rod can only be so precise, right? That's the limit of everything. Anything can only be so precise. So a honing rod could get the knife blade from, let's say, it should be like this. A honing rod will get it from here to here. A strop is that final step that takes it from this to this. I don't have an actual manual sharpener like I talked about. I don't have an actual one. I have this, which is part of a knife sheath. The reason is because I think these suck. I absolutely hate these. Now, there's a lot of different reasons as to why I hate these manual sharpeners. But the main reason is that they just suck. Now, this is essentially a whetstone, not actually a whetstone, but imagine the coarse end of a whetstone, which has been put into a V shape, and in this case, into a knife sheath, right? So it's not too hard to use. But it's extremely easy to tweak your angle and just destroy your blade. Let me give you an example real quick. This is perfect. If I do this, I'm destroying my angle. I'm destroying my bevel. If I do this, I'm destroying my bevel. But if I do this, it sharpens it. Put this up. I'm done on my rant, okay? Let's talk about this last style here. I don't know what these are called, as I said earlier, but they are pretty cool. So the way this thing works is you have this piece that goes on here. This is the Lansky system, by the way. I'm not the best with this particular one, but this is my understanding of it. You take your knife, you put the blade in there, you cinch this down tight, you take your stone, which, let me show you. It comes with a few stones. There's normally 4. I don't know where one of them went, so I have 3. But here's the coarse stone. You put a little bit of sharpening oil on there. You take your, I think I'm doing this right. You take your rod, and you put your rod through that hole right there. And after you do that, you tighten this most of the way. Now what you do is you put it through the hole with the appropriate angle. This says 17, 20, 25, 30. And then what you do is you hold on to it here, or you hold on to the knife, and then you do this. Essentially, it's a whetstone that moves around your knife rather than a knife that moves around a whetstone. Once you get that burr, you take it, flip it around. I don't know if you're actually supposed to do that. No, it does. You are. Never mind. And then you hit this side. Now, I do not particularly like that system as opposed to the other ones I've shown you. You can get a lot more precise than you can with the electric sharpener. It's obviously better than the manual sharpener. It's not quite on the same level as a whetstone, I would say. I like whetstones more, and that's just personal preference. I know there's a lot of people out there that like that style of sharpener. I know Worksharp has improved on that design a lot in recent years. That's a very old model. The new ones are way more precise. They have a lot more dials, but I'm pretty sure they're a lot more expensive too. A huge thing that you should do is that whenever you think your knife is getting dull, and this especially applies for hunters and anglers, anybody that's going to be processing animals or just repetitive knife use, go ahead and the second you feel your knife is getting duller, touch it up, okay? It's best to have like a pocket knife sharpener with the set angles. Again, Worksharp has one. I'll link it down below. That's the one I use for hunting. It's a good sharpener, right? Anytime I feel my knife's getting dull, I just pull that one out. I touch it up a few times on the ceramic, and I'm usually good to go right back to cutting up that animal. So there you have it. Those are my best tips, tricks, tactics, and methods for sharpening knives. You guys want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. I got plenty more content on the way. See ya.